Welcome to Conversations with Life. This is Cedar here with Xochi and Keith in our usual place, doing our thing, and it's good to be with you today. Today we're going to talk about the little tiny question about what it is to be alive. What is aliveness? The last episode of the season, and we started with the question. We went to the depth of why is it worth it?
Yeah.
We've talked a lot this season about the path that people take and how these different paths are. With Colby, we talked a lot about just kind of that interesting path that takes you through these different practices and experiences, and nothing makes you feel more alive than a cold plunge. And what is it, though? Like, to kind of just ask a big question, what is it? Mm-hmm. What is life? What is it to be alive? And what is the state and feeling of aliveness?
Mm. It's all a simulation. That's the answer.
Right?
See, the simulation thing is so obvious to me.
Yeah.
Because what else would it be? The funny thing is, a simulation of what?
I mean, that's true. So is this a Matrix thing?
When we say it's a simulation, all we're saying is that something is causing this. And to me, that's the most obvious thing in the universe. This is why I'm a theist and not an atheist. Because there's obviously something happening here. I'm aware and can ask that question. That is God. So, I guess maybe that gets us to the first thing in it, right? Like, it's not about the thing, it's about the experience of the thing. Mm-hmm. That's aliveness, maybe. Mm-hmm. And, I don't even know about that, but like it's a simulation. They found certain things in the genetic code of human beings that mirrors what you would put on a computer screen, right? Like the kind of code that you would use to render data onto a screen. That seems to be involved in the very basic beingness that we have in our genetic code, right?
Okay.
Which is fascinating. But all that means is that this is a rendering.
Something created it.
It's something created it. Like, this is a rendering of experience that does that mean that there's something beyond this? To me, it's absolutely obvious that there is. The materialist notion that this is just what it is and I'm just this is absurd, because I can ask that question. To me that satisfies that entirely. There's a cause, and I don't think God is some white dude in a robe, somewhere. Although that's a version of God. Mm. I feel like God. I like Jung's concept of God. It's this thing that's happening, But what does it mean to be alive and experience aliveness? So I guess the first thing is that it is about the experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, what is it to be alive is to experience. The only thing we know about death is that the experience that we're having now will end with death, right? The experience framed in the way that we understand it will end. We'll stop experiencing things in this way. Mm. So if I look at what does it mean to be alive, it means to experience whatever this is in the way I'm experiencing it, right? I don't really care what it is because it's all I can experience. I can't really, there's not a thing of I'm going to travel up the data cables and transcend. For me, maybe that someone else is doing that on, ayahuasca later tonight or whatever. Maybe that's what you do, right?
Absolutely.
For me, I don't travel up the data cable and shake hands with the coding people.
In ayahuasca, they call it
Ralph
the vine.
Situation.
They call it the vine. It's the vine to the ancestors.
Sure.
So literally, you're traveling up the data cable to experience the larger concept of what this is.
Yeah, I don't need to jack in. I don't need to plug my hair nerves into a tree and bone it like an avatar. I don't know how to do those things, right? That doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means Keith, that's not part of my life experience. So everything that is, though, is living. And that unfortunately means like the absolute shits and the time when I want to end the experience is also part of the experience. And I liken it to a video game because I'm a tech nerd and a gamer, right? And I think to myself, there are times when I'm on like half a heart left, you know, and I'm Link and I'm looking at the monsters in front of me and being like, they're going to fucking kill me. And sometimes I kind of want them to, so I can just start over with the full hearts, you know. And that's all part of the game, right? Yeah. And the game over screen is also part of the game.
It's part of the game.
You know, and I hope that there's another go round and we get more lives. And I hope that there's like some like hidden secret bonus level. And if there is, cool. And if you can get there and have fun with it. But like everything, every part of what's happening to me in this moment, that is living. That is life. Right? And I'm like, it's all I have. So why worry about what I don't, right? I had a friend was like, I wanna die. He was feeling suicidal. And he's talking about like the afterlife, and it'll be so much better because I won't be here and I won't be experiencing this. And I'm like, you don't know that. The afterlife could be just another level of the same shit. Or it could be worse. It could be like you satisfied we could be on level 2 right now, bro, and you're like trying to jump straight to level 35, and it's like you're gonna freaking get ripped up to shreds up there, right? And I said to him, and it seemed to have an effect, but I said to him something along the lines of, this is all you have and it's all you know. And the idea of leaving that early for something that you don't know and don't understand, like, what's the draw of that? If you're right and it's better, you'll get there eventually. And if you're wrong and it's worse, what are you rushing for? You know? And it took him a second to realize that his assumption that anything would be better than this was based on like an unknown, you know, like there is no way he had no way of knowing what the other thing was. I don't know. So I just, when like that's where suicide loses me, right? And I've been fortunate in my life not to have very many moments of suicidal ideation or thoughts or whatever, but I think about it and I'm like, that just seems terrifying. Like I like, even in the worst of it here, I know what it is. You know, I've experienced it before. Anyway, that's, yeah.
So, Steve, what is a recent time where you might have said, I feel so alive?
Well, you know, it's such an interesting
3 days ago.
Because there's,
But you know, there are those moments, though, right? Where you're like, I feel so alive.
That was a
and
throwback
like,
to
what?
the ayahuasca celibacy clause.
Thank you.
That moment I got off the plane.
That was a moment. That was a moment. Xochi had been gone a week, and so we had one night together.
And then we're back on dieta.
Move into dieta. But yeah, like, honestly, the more I feel, and I think this is a distortion, I feel more alive in my pain. You know.
Now, is that because that connects you to other things, or is it because like it's what you've always known?
It's because I don't know. There's something in me that's fascinated with it. So one of the practices that I do, medicine practices, hape, and hape can go up, right? But when I'm by myself, you know, and I'm just there, hape often takes me down, you know, to the density, whatever it is in me that's feeling dense. And when you move energy into density, the experience is painful. And then that resonates with other painful things. And so, yes, you know, sex is aliveness personified, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And it's interesting. There's almost something in me that takes it for granted, though, you know? Like, this is a biological function happening biologically, although there's so much energy and other process that's happening, and it's gorgeous. But nothing is as real as pain. Does that make sense? Like, nothing quite is as real as, you know, like, sometimes I'll have a hape experience and I'll be like, what the fuck do I do this to myself? Because it just finds those densities, and then that resonates, and then I start feeling bad about my role as a parent and my economic situation and all the many failures of my life. But I kind of love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of it's my own self BDSM or something where I get to feel that so real and so visceral and the places where the energy sticks, like energy doesn't lie.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I can be with that experience, the more it transmutes into something else, and that is fascinating.
Yeah. It's almost like in painful experiences, there's like an added layer of resistance that almost gives it an edge that makes it even sweeter to come out
because
of.
I'm not resisting the joy as much.
Yeah.
I'm like, can I keep it? Can I keep it? That's a kind of layer of resistance, but like, can I keep it, please? I mean it. And then, but in the pain, it's something, and I want to say honest. Who's it? I think it's the guy, The Art of War. Who wrote The Art of War? Sun
Tzu, yeah.
And I think he says something like that. Like you really know somebody in this painful place. So like if you're in a torture situation,
you can't, like, your masks are not available.
You get to meet the real human in that. And there's something to taking ourselves and being with ourselves in discomfort that really is useful. I think it's the cold is like that. It's a place where you can't run. I can run. I can kind of escape the upside a little bit, or take it for granted. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about how we were joking last night, how like the amount of beer I ever drink is a sip. Or maybe 3, but like
maybe 3.
I love the experience because I hate it so much. Like
you talked about this before too with food, that like you enjoy the food that you hate.
Yeah, and I remember one of our friends was teaching a workshop for us one night, and we were talking about orgasm, and she described a shudder as a version of an orgasm, and I was like, that's it. Like things that repulse us also like in some ways maybe even have a stronger like visceral experience attached to them if you can be present with it. And so like I love like at least having a taste of things that are really gross, because that feeling of just like shuddering and like resisting it and then like coming out of it is really satisfying.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, like pain is one of those things, like to me, pain and ecstasy, like the pleasure and pain situation, is your body responds to it in a way that's not conscious, right? When you experience pain, you go into fight or flight, survival, adrenaline, like your body kicks into a mode of just survive, and it takes you out of yourself. Like, this is the thing, like, warning, self-harm, not a good coping mechanism. Please don't hurt yourself to feel something. But there's a reason that like self-harm is a strategy, a maladaptive strategy that people use. And it's because it takes you out of your mind, it puts you into your body, and it forces your body to do something predictable. If I hurt myself, my body will release a flood of endorphins. If I have been feeling nothing and numb for weeks, that sounds like bliss, right? And in the height of an orgasm, especially like, the male physiology, I don't need to be in a good mood to be in a good mood. You know what I mean? Like women, have a more of a connection to like their emotional state of being is more connected to their like pleasure receptors and stuff, of what I've noticed, and I'm just one layman's opinion, right? But if I want to make myself feel happy, it takes me 6 minutes and a box of tissues, and I can be fine, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there is a predictable response to pleasure and to pain, and it's controllable, and typically comes with that release of endorphins and serotonin and stuff. So I feel like when you talk about, Steve, like you get pleasure from that pain space, that makes sense to me. Because it's a very
it's not exactly pleasure. It's a the question was, when did you feel most alive?
Oh, sure, you get a life feeling, And
I can think about the challenges I experienced, the difficulties I've had, and even recent difficulties. I can think about these things, and I can think about the injustice of the world. You know, I can hold all that pretty heavy in me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that I know there's something in me that decided to be alive. You meet a few crisis points where you're like, well, I could be done right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is too painful. I don't want to be with this. I don't need to be with this. The world would be better if I just kind of exit stage left, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose to do that. You know, whatever that is to everybody, I think almost every life gets to a point of that. I don't know that doesn't happen. Maybe it should happen. I don't know. I don't want to say that, right? Because that's like rough, and then I decided, so now when I experience those down things, it's kind of a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I'm not going to let that deflect my life. You know, I chose life. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe aliveness is a choice in the face of death, in the face of self-destruction, in the face of all the negative things. Maybe that's when you say that, you know, rather than go to a bliss experience, you know, which is obvious to me, that choice, that being with it so much and letting myself just go dark into that place, because I can almost do that now without fear or whatever, because I just know that I've chosen. You know, I'm going to be alive. I'm going to do with this life what I can.
Right. So the fear of going down gets smaller, and so then it just becomes like this exploration into like, okay, what else is in there? What else is down there? What else? Because I know I'm not going to, you know, give it power over my behavior and choices. I can actually know myself at that depth. Well,
and this is one of the reasons why I think, you know, facing our shadows, whatever people want to say it. I don't like the word hunting, like Esther uses, but like, you know, fine. Let's say hunting the shadows. Like finding our shadow places, finding our dark, our maladaptive perversity, you know, like, is one of the ways you get to ecstasy. You know, it's why any ecstasy container like Esther or whatever, they find you need to do that, you know, like.
Well, because part of what's keeping you from missing life is your fear of your shadow, is your fear of experiences that are either unknown or that seem like too overwhelming or more than you could handle. And so when you face that part of yourself that, you know, is the demon that you've put so much of your conscious effort into not being, you know, when that behavior from your dad shows up in you that you've tried your whole life to not be, it's like the worst, but then it's like you break into freedom because you're like, oh, now I don't have to be trying to control this anymore. I'm actually going to meet this and learn how to work with it. That releases so much energy, and it gets us out of our head and into our body. And I think that's a part of the aliveness is, well, sure, part of our aliveness is hanging out in our mental space. But I think when we talk about I felt so alive, it's because we were with our body in an experience, whether it was a down experience or an up experience. And I think, you know, when you were talking about the bliss thing, one of the things about bliss or ecstasy, or that even like the upper love experiences, is that a lot of people have so much conditioning and fear around that side of it, that can be almost scarier. To let yourself go into like absolute bliss and joy can be scarier than, you know, going into pain. I do think that for some people, if not most people, it's easier, and sometimes we'll even create, you know, these little blockages or sufferings or drama because it feels too good. Like we can't stand how good it feels to be alive.
You know, Carolyn used to be Elliot, now Lovewell, talks about havingness levels, and this ability to vibrate in that much. But I kind of don't even think it's about havingness. It's about experiencing this, right? Mm-hmm. So like the Peter Levine practice is one of the things I really like about, he talks a lot about biological trauma and how we're biological beings, and trauma is largely biological. And he gets people out of trauma once with one of the ways with his experience of taking yourself really low, imagining the worst of the worst, right? Or just being just really sad. And then moving that up into your bliss, imagining a blissful situation, and then moving it down. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that it's not about either. It's about the energy that when you go down, you're going to come back up.
Right. And when you go up, steer that.
Yeah. When you go up, you're going to come back down. In fact, our biology almost makes it happen. When we have a peak experience, almost always, the body is going to level it out with a little bit of a down, You can enjoy that down if you're expecting it, by the way. Mm-hmm. You can be like, oh, here I come. Boy, I really had a good time. Mm-hmm. And always looking the fact that, on that other side of that, something like that choice to be alive or whatever, once we kind of deepen ourselves enough to hold more of it, then we know every down and every experience of disharmony will right itself, into that bliss stage. And, that sounds like a bit of a roller coaster, but it's not, because what I think happens after a while, and I think what aliveness really is that we kind of hold the bliss in the down and the down in the bliss, like those two the lines get blurred. Keith says he doesn't want to go up the wire and experience God, but you can't help it.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Enlightenment isn't something you do. You're not like trying to do something, whatever. Even in medicine, I think what I'm seeking in medicine usually is like, I want to understand in a compact way the experience I'm already having in life. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to get out of life. I'm experiencing life here. And in a medicine weekend, in like an ayahuasca weekend or a psilocybin experience, whatever, you get that.
Like the concentrated version.
You kind of get a concentrated version of it. And sometimes that helps me occupy this better, the life thing that's happening, that's already happening up and down and through, and might even help me move with that a little bit easier. It's
my experience with that is that it is a pause on the mind chatter that is often trying to judge, manipulate, negotiate that energy experience. And it's like, it reminds me that I can just be with the energy experience, that's for me a more pleasant form of aliveness than constantly being in this hyper vigilant space of trying to control and condition and kind of negotiate with life about things that are largely out of my control. I would rather just experience that, like you're saying, I chose to be alive, so I'm gonna fucking be alive, and I'm gonna like really say, okay, life, come have me.
Yeah.
Show me what is possible here. And if there's downs, then it's like, yes, this is part of it too. And if there's ups that like almost break me because it's more joy than I can handle, it's like, yes.
Well, we've talked about this before. Like, those moments are the stretching of the container, right? Like, that's necessary. Mm-hmm. So not only is it like a part of life and therefore should be experienced, but it's also like the part in which you grow.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm living my life, we've talked about this before, but if I'm living my life constantly within my own means of handling, I'm not encouraged as quickly to grow, right? Mm-hmm. My container doesn't expand because my consciousness hasn't expanded in that space, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that, for me, when I think about like what is life and what is experience there, it's connection, right? So pain and pleasure are connection to my body, but they're also connection to experience, connection to people, connection to the uplink, if we want to go that way, right? But like connection is living.
Mm.
If I'm not connected to something, I don't feel alive. I feel adrift, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask like, when was the last time you felt connected? Last night in a drag out fight with my partner, I felt
You
alive.
felt alive.
I felt alive. You know what I mean? And you know, but also during the bliss and the connection and the holding each other afterwards and the being able to turn to each other at the end of that fight and be like, okay, we've had our feelings, we've felt our feelings, we've thrown them at each other a little bit like monkeys at the zoo with feces. Now what do we do with it, right? Can we now, you know, and then the connection that came after that was more alive for the disconnection that happened before it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so to me, life is connecting. And that's when people are like, oh, I like to be on my own. I'm like, you're connecting with something different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I connect with people. I'm more extroverted than introverted. I recharge my battery when I'm around people. Right? People are like, oh, I'm introverted. I don't like connection. Like, no, you do like connection, but you connect with the self. You connect with experience. You connect with the silence, you know? But it's different from that feeling of being disconnected and adrift. And I think sometimes like the lowest lows often come from that disconnection, and they're the ones that are really hard to get out of. You know?
Well, you know, it's interesting. There's an interesting relationship between aliveness and connection, I notice, because my own aliveness will result in connection, but somebody else's aliveness will result in my being inspired towards aliveness, if that makes sense. So sometimes, I tend to be on the introverted thing. So my experience is the more I am with myself, and I think this is a general principle, the more I am with myself, the more connected I am inside, the more of my masculine and feminine are, the more individuated I am, the more my light and dark I hold, all those things, then the more available I am for real connection, which people mostly can't stand. People mostly can't stand it, but the more that somebody is connected themselves, the more I'm available to be alive with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In that conversation, in that experience, in that whatever. So introvert extrovert, I think there's just two different styles of being with that relationship between alive and the connection. I think aliveness comes first, but I think sometimes connection inspires aliveness.
Yeah.
And so like, but then there's the shadow of that in which I need to feed off of somebody's energy to be alive, right? There's this interesting line there, right? Where somebody might be an attention whore and they need somebody to always make them feel alive, in which case they end up being an overall take.
A drainer, yeah.
A drainer, right? And that actually brings a container or a relationship.
It's not real
down.
connection, I think, is part of it too.
Yeah, because it's not real.
And that's the same thing with somebody that's avoiding
it's
all the time with their introversion. They're not actually connecting.
They're not connecting.
They're just
inside.
avoiding. They're actually avoiding sensation instead of moving towards aliveness. And that.
Yeah. So there's that line where a good impulse to connect becomes a coping mechanism of not doing it myself, and a good impulse to go in and do my work just becomes, I'm not really doing my work. I'm just avoiding
isolation.
I'm avoiding the context that makes that obvious. Yeah. And it's really
that was interesting for me on my trip to Hawaii last week, because I previously always experienced myself and had other people reflect to me that I was an extrovert. But I was more in the line of needing other people to like validate my existence, kind of, you know? And so I was always seeking social experiences, but never really feeling satisfied by them. And, you know, so then I go to this thing, you know, and there's 11 people and we're all fasting and there's plenty of downtime because they don't have a lot of stuff planned on purpose. And I spent all of my free time alone.
Mm.
You know, I didn't have the bandwidth to not be in like deep connection. And sometimes it takes bandwidth to get from this sort of surface level to.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just don't have it in me for small talk right now. Like, I don't want to use any energy talking to people, which is super unusual for my, you know, especially like even just a couple years ago self, to find myself in this like pure introversion where sure, I interacted in the group experiences and whatever and talked to people on the, you know, hikes or whatever. But mostly it was just absolutely restful and delicious to be with myself. And there was real deep connection there. You know, and Steve was talking about the havingness thing. And is that quite what it is? But I really do think that there's a capacity that we're building. Like you were saying about the growth thing, Keith, is that we're building capacity between polarities. And that gives us almost access to more sensation with aliveness. The more energy we hold, the more like vibrant that aliveness feels.
Yeah.
When we allow ourselves to be stretched between those polarities. But like the connection thing for me, I have less patience for bullshit than I used to.
Well, I mean, you were hungry.
Well, even just like in general, I know. Like even like right now, it's like if I have to work hard to get to that deeply connected space, because that's where I exist in myself most of the time.
Yeah.
I might actually choose not to engage because it won't feel like if there's not a real good chance I'm going to get to the actual connection place, it doesn't feel satisfying to me.
See, I've been having this experience, right? Like being in instructional coaching right now and being at this school where I feel like I've been there for a year. I've worked my ass off. I've been trying to connect. Like that's the whole point of coaching, right? Is to connect in a way that like helps uplift others and support others. And I came to this realization like a week and a half ago, and I'm in a meeting talking about someone who got offended by my energy and felt judgment when I was trying to offer support. And I'm sitting there being like, I just don't want to fucking connect with you. Like, I just don't want to do this, you know? And I remember thinking to myself, like, why am I spending all of my time trying to convince other people to connect with me? You know, and on one side, there's this real thing of like, this is the profession I've chosen. Instructional coaching is very much like connect to support, right? And I'm like, but I noticed that there was a value attached, almost like a leech, to the connection. There was a value of I am doing a good job as an instructional coach if people like me.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, fuck you. Like I am a coach. I have the expertise. I'm here to help you. I've offered my love and support. You've rejected it. Fine. That's on you. I cannot spend my whole life trying to get you to see that I'm not a bad guy. You know? And it was a moment of, I remember releasing connection with this person. And not in a reprimand way, not in a way of punishing, just in a way of like, I don't need this to feel okay about what I'm doing here, right? And I felt more connected to myself, to my job, and to my purpose in releasing what I would consider to be a toxic connection than I think I would have found if I had been successful with that person, you know? And it's sort of an interesting thing, like to disconnect in order to connect sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's why people drink alcohol. I call that disconnect to connect. Your brain gets dumb and then you stop defending yourself mentally and you can actually talk to somebody sometimes.
Yeah.
But the connection is, you know, going back to the boundary episode, connection is always, access is different. So it's like, by giving somebody less access to you, for instance, you can increase connection because there's not a positive energy flow between you. So then you just cut off, then you have to cut off access. And that's the ultimate boundary, leaving the room, leaving a situation, stopping trying to work with somebody. This is why the classroom is such a disconnected experience for so many students, because they're sitting there forced into access. They don't have the right to make a boundary.
Yeah.
So there's the teacher up there yapping. There's all the kids in the classroom, and they're in this container going, I have to do the things they say, and I'm supposed to smile and pretend like I'm supposed to be here so I can get participation points. And I don't feel like it, so the access is like jammed open, and then the kid is just like overwhelmed. I'm talking about myself here, but like,
like my kids too.
Right? And on a good day, they might experience connection in the classroom. That's why I told the kids my rule was go sleep. If you can't handle this, if you're not having a good day and if you don't feel like being here, I certainly don't want you to feel that way, So I had kids that slept for a semester,
Yeah.
And then the next semester they would wake up and they would go, oh, okay, like you didn't force me to be here, so maybe I can choose. You have to say no to say yes. Like you have to turn off access.
Yeah.
To ensure connection, because when it's just access and the professionals, this is a problem too. Like this is my job to be with this person, to coach them, right?
Yeah.
But even then, in my interaction with that, we learn how to monitor our energy flow with any individual so that we can stay in connection. Because sometimes having having a conversation with somebody is going to destroy it's going to deplete aliveness. And so this is why in a classroom, most classrooms are dead.
Yeah.
I walk into most classrooms and I'm just like, oh, I substitute right now, and I can
the
feel
energy
it.
in here is comatose.
It's when I walk into an alive classroom, I'm curious. I'm looking at the walls. I'm seeing I'm looking at the policies. I'm seeing what the students are doing because I'm so curious about what they're doing that's different. One of the mistakes that you can make is try to be alive in a dead place. Because they'll hate you. And then they crucified Jesus. Here's the most alive human that's ever been in the myth, anyway. Archetype. The archetype that signifies aliveness, and it's veriness. It's isness, The I am is there, And people are like, fuck you. That's good.
What's the most gruesome way we can kill you?
You're making me uncomfortable.
How can we unalive you the fucking fastest?
A lot of people think that being alive is easy. It's not. People will fight you. And, if you express in any way that's not normal for them, they'll can be like, what's going on with them? I have these two experiences I have almost always. Like, people like, what's wrong with you? And like, how do I be like you? Like I sit in the temple, like at the revival last year, and like 3 or 4 men came up to me. It's like, what is going on with you? You feel alive. You feel like you're doing something that I want to do,
Yeah.
And then half the other time, I'll get people like, you're weird. Like, fuck you. You're wrong. I'm going to project all my shadow on you and make you the devil because this is not right. Any kind of aliveness. And it's challenging to be in a state where you're flowing energy and you're
everyone's so used to the internal conflict that actually keeps them from their aliveness most of the time. If you think of the percentage of your day that you're in your head dealing with your internal conflict, the average person, that's most of the day. If they're not, they're doing some kind of avoidance of that with media or whatever. So when that internal conflict starts to be like met and held and just felt as a polarity, it's kind of like Keith, when you were talking about going home after losing weight, it like offends people.
Yeah
It offends people that like that you have resolved some of your inner conflict and that they can feel that life and see it, and it's challenging. And in my Gene Keys profile, one of the things it says is that most people will either experience fear or awe when they encounter me, because those are the 2 available responses when there's that much life, there's that much aliveness. which for me has created an interesting challenge of not feeling rejected by that, because either one of those feels like a rejection. Because I'm just like, I just want you to be here with me and like play and like be my friend, and instead it's like, oh my God, you're so awesome, or oh my God, you're so scary. And so, you know, part of my growth path has been like, okay, can I just like hold that and enjoy like the aliveness in me with presence and let other people experience it as they will. And it helps me have better boundaries, because, you know, I'm only willing to do so much work for that connection. Like you were saying with your, you know, your coworker, it's like at some point it stops being honoring for either of us for me to continue expending resource when you actually aren't available for the connection.
And it becomes a drain on my life, like on my life force too. Like, I found myself dreading every time I walked out of my office on the off chance I was going to interact with, you know, this person, because it was such a pull on me, you know, and I could feel my authenticness retreating and my, you know, the mask of amenability and connection coming up, and I'm just like, God, this is exhausting, you know, like. And so like in a real, very real way, it like was really shutting down like life in general, even experience. And it's, you know, it's interesting because since both of us have, I think, released the need for connection, we've actually connected better.
Yeah,
than
like
we
what
had
Steve
before.
was saying.
And so now it's like a lot better of a situation. You know, because we both were like, yeah, this is a thing. We're not connecting. And you know what? We don't need to connect. You know, we can still function without being buddies. You know? And it was interesting. I've never had that experience in a professional relationship before, which is fortuitous for me, but also a unique learning experience at this point.
Yeah, I similarly had an experience this year where there was you know, a rupture with a friend that I, for the very first time ever, didn't feel like repairing. You know, and that was shocking and a little bit scary for me at first. Like, am I becoming a bad person? Because before I would go, you know, above and beyond and out of my way to like come back to connection. And you know, I think there's a realization of what I was calling connection wasn't even connection. And it does take a lot of energy to put those masks on in order to like please someone else. You know, what's the difference between pleasing someone and like hitting that point of satisfaction for them versus actual connection? And sometimes that can be subtle, you know, the difference there. But when you were talking about that mask thing, I was like, well, yeah. And, you know, when we are employing those masking strategies, what we're probably also doing is resisting our life force. We're probably shutting down parts of ourselves that are authentic. And that's part of why it's exhausting. Because resisting life is exhausting.
Yeah.
Well, it is the Joseph Campbell quote that's his biggest thing is follow your bliss. And then later when he experienced a lot of like these like 60s hippies, which he kind of had a problem with, although he was a bit of a hippie, you know, in his sense, he's like, what I should have said is follow your blisters. And,
that's what I meant. I misspoke.
But he did mean bliss, and what I get from that, but real bliss. See, it's the fake bliss, isn't it? And it's just like connection. Fake connection feels good for a second, but isn't satisfying long term.
Yeah.
And you know, if I have a fight with somebody and I repair it, that's a connection. All of it. You know, if I never have to fight with somebody, that could be really beautiful. Too, but I have to question that too. It's like, what's going on there? Because false connection will take you away, and false bliss will take you away. I can bliss out anytime. You know, this is what drugs is when it's not medicine. It's I'm escaping the doldrums of this life by an easy experience into something that I didn't earn. But true aliveness is earned. You can't, like I said, you got to go through the hard, and you can't avoid it. or the hard work. And, here's the thing. You can choose your hard, or the hard will get chosen, So that's why, to me, sitting in Hape and practice and feeling the down and just being with it and considering that a beautiful experience, not always in the moment, but sometimes, or sitting with a hard relationship that was a rupture and understanding there's no repair. That's hard. It's hard, but it's an earned thing, bliss, a constant, not a constant, but a frequent state of bliss is earned. And I think that's the thing that you do. So one of the things that we do in school, for instance, is it's not hard enough, and you can't make it hard because hard has to be chosen.
Right. Yeah. You can't force a kid into hard.
Yeah. The only thing that teachers should do is be selling on the fact that they should try hard. They should just be selling the fact that to these kids that they should do the effort and never require it. Because then it shows up naturally. They watch their peers who do the hard work and actually do the thing, and they love it and they're in love with it. The only thing I could do as a teacher, like I said, I just set myself on fire every day with interest and understanding and curiosity about the book and the things we were doing. And if I couldn't do that, I couldn't teach. I just had to show up and be like, I'm alive. Yeah. You want to be alive too? This is fun, right? That's it. That's all you can do. And to me, that's every container that I ever do this. Any success, right? I don't care what I'm teaching or what I'm saying. It's even this podcast, right? Am I alive?
Yeah.
And can I be alive enough that people see that and go, yeah, I want to be alive too. And, I'm going to piss some people off in that process because they're not going to want to, and they're going to call it something else. But, gods, I'm committed.
It's worth being alive.
It's worth it. I want to be alive. I want to feel it. I want to note that the result of being alive is work that's meaningful, right? You're going to have to find work that's meaningful, and you're going to have to figure out your sexuality. And both of those are, Freud would have called it libido, life force energy coming through you, and it has to go somewhere. And so I'm going to do something. I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah.
That hopefully somebody listens to. I'm going to do work. I'm going to do work that's meaningful. And I'm going to have to engage myself, and not even engage sexual. I'm going to have to meet my sexuality somewhere and either transmute it into something or express it in some way that's meaningful and beautiful. Without those two things, your aliveness doesn't have a way to go, right? And in a way, you could say that's connection. And, when I say sexuality, that could be I go hug a tree. It could be I am just breathing in this way that is beautiful and ecstatic, right? But it could be engagement with other human beings or myself or whatever, but energy is coming through me and I'm going to have to meet it and move it through.
Yeah. It's reminding me that, as a homeschool mom for so many years, the number one thing that worked for my family was meaningful work. Just inspiring those kids to engage with their environment. And there were chores. There were things that were assigned, but I did as little of that as possible and more of a focus on, habit and just feeling into their environment. What can I do here that will make it better? When they are 18 months old, there's nothing they like more than walking around with a spray bottle and cleaning up. We would say shooting bad guys, and they would just clean up all the little marks. And it wasn't even that big of a deal. It wasn't like I walked into the room and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I gave my 18-month-old the spray bottle. But to them, it started to cultivate that sense of I can meet my environment in a way that I am contributing and receiving. And so it was interesting that you brought that meaningful work thing in, because I think that's what's missing in most kids' lives, and therefore most adult lives, is that we've been conditioned that work is this bad thing that we have to kind of get through so that we can feel alive, when it's actually the key to our aliveness is how we engage with our environment, how we engage with life, how we engage with other people.
Yeah, one of the most alive works is music.
Mm.
Like people who do music for work, who can somehow figure it out, that they can play with sound and rhythm for a livelihood. Mm-hmm. It's such an alive place. It also could be a place of like deadness.
Right? When you take, like this happened to me with sewing. I started taking on jobs to make money off sewing, and I quit that really quick because I was like, this is like one thing that I really love, and I do not want to ruin it. But there's that whole thing of like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, like make whatever work you're doing meaningful by being present with it, by bringing your aliveness to it. Mm-hmm. And then what I've noticed is that life will meet that with bringing opportunities into your life that match your personality better. So you might have to start with, being a teacher when you want to be an administrator. You got to start with being a teacher and really meeting that with aliveness and whatever. And then like life is going to bring you those things that are going to increase your capacity. But I always say if it doesn't change how you're doing the dishes, you probably didn't actually have the experience that you want. If you go do on a medicine trip, if you go have some big retreat experience, if you lose 100 pounds or whatever, like if it doesn't change how you meet life in those little ordinary moments, you probably haven't done what you thought you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I realized that I really wanted to do an episode on maturity, and I probably would have done this one if I had thought about it. But aliveness is the end of it is maturity. Mm-hmm. It will move you there. And I noticed like the healer field where a lot of people get into it in a very immature way. Mm-hmm. And they think, energy moving in through them. They want to be a healer and they're going to heal you. Right? They're going to heal the world. And it takes on grandiosity. And really what they need to do is pay their dues. Like be in it with people for long enough that you gain enough capacity for aliveness that in that field that you're really doing something that's solid and overall sustainable rather than, introducing people to bliss states or making them feel a little bit better with a Band-Aid,
Yeah.
Like
it's like, trees when they're mature.
Yeah.
They just fruit. They're not efforting for their fruit, and they're not pretending to have fruit before they do.
They're not telling everybody how much better their fruit is than
but there's
everybody else's.
A whole phase of like stemming and leafing that is so beautiful if we can be with it, and not rush to a place where we aren't yet.
Yeah, totally. I think part of it is in that new spring or something, we do have that momentum, or we like, we're going to do it. We're going to be the big thing. And then capitalism comes in and says, you need to be the big thing to make enough money to do this. And it doesn't give us time in the ashram or wherever.
Totally.
And I think the people that I really admire end up doing that thing, the cultivation of aliveness. Anyway, we'll do this thing on maturity, but
yeah, I like it.
It points pretty next to that next place.
So maybe like the goal or the pathways, like not place of ending, but direction. Like the true north of life is maturity, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, and not maturity in the stolid sense of like you're doing everything right, but but maturity in the sense that you fruit, you know, and you move into the
come
place
to fruition.
Whatever you are, fruitates.
Yeah, there you go. Fruitates. I don't know what the verb is.
Fruits.
I think it's just that you fruit.
I think it's just fruit.
I like fruits though. Fruitates.
And the fruiting is effortless and abundant. Like there's always enough of the fruit around the tree that it falls into the ground and nourishes the next.
Right.
And creates the next
that happens in all
next
life.
generation. Yeah.
One measure of aliveness is what can you not do right? What can you not do, rather? What can you not do? Because when that arises in you, that probably is coming from a long set of experiences and whatever, that and that, you know, your upper chakras are activated too, right? Because there's a lot that you can not do that's probably, you know, can hurt you. But like what can you not do? What's coming through you that like you have to say or do?
Has to be done.
I kind of feel like this podcast is one of the things like we've wanted to teach and we want to do it in various ways. And this is an expression, just almost the natural place and way. And I don't know if that's the ultimate fruit, but it's part of this process. It's part of learning something that to me just comes through. It's like, oh, you're for this in some way. Whether this is a building block or part of the end.
Yeah, and sometimes the stuff
where one thing leads to another.
The stuff that we can't resist is our total trauma and bullshit. And also, if we can be present with that, that's when it gets to be refined.
It's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, you have to, right? You have to. You can't not do your trauma because your trauma will do you. So
but you can do it without consciousness and presence.
Yes, yeah, but you can't not do it. Like you will do it, and so these double negatives are killing me, Steve. So
it took me a solid
so it's
3 minutes of wait, where are we?
So you have to do it with the good energy. Yes. You know, like you've got to do it consciously in order to channel that to connection to life, because trauma will kill you. You know, if you are doing it unconsciously or if you're letting it do you.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, you know, probably what we'll say in some way during every episode is the presence is the game. Yeah. And that whatever you're experiencing in this moment, if you can be present with it and accept it and love it, your life. Your ecstatic current is gonna be there with you, and even if it's the worst thing you've ever experienced, you're gonna at least get a little taste of that, like kind of kinky ecstasy around, like, oh my God, this is the worst pain I've ever felt. Like, I'm so glad I'm alive that I get to feel this, and I hope it ends really soon.
For me, it's hindsight. I could be like, this has been the most insane 3 years of my life, and nothing, literally down to like the socks I wear, nothing is the same now as it was 3 years ago, and that has been fucking terrifying. But it has been exhilarating.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I need to do to feel alive. I need to get new socks.
Change your socks, bro.
Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do it.
And the good thing is your son will just fucking steal them. Every time I buy a set of socks.
My sons have now moved out of the house.
Your socks are safe.
My socks are now safe.
Yeah.
But not safe for me. I was just saying, as I was packing for this weekend, I was like, where the fuck are my socks?
Yeah.
So it's time for new socks anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
But you know, that is a little hack. Is there a pattern interrupt? Is there even just a little thing that you can do a little bit differently so that it requires your presence? So, you know, you can go out and buy all these new socks and be like in the dopamine of like buying stuff, which for me, it's just like, I want the dopamine of buying stuff. And so I'm going to really enjoy the fuck out of it, because sometimes that just happens, right? But also you're going to go buy new socks, and that's automatically going to interrupt the pattern of your wife and or girlfriend buying your socks every Christmas.
You know what's great though?
And they're both in my case.
Yeah.
And I still managed to lose them all by, what time is it?
But like those
March,
new socks,
April?
Every time you look at them,
they can mean
bring
something.
you into presence.
That's the thing. We can, like, the most fucking awesome thing about life is that we can attach so much fucking meaning to new socks. Like, going out and buying new socks can be the first step of the rest of your life.
Totally.
And you know what I mean? Like, you can be like, I'm going to change
new socks,
everything.
new man.
Yeah, we can do that. Like, we can, like, that's how I know that this is different from anything else. Is because I can literally attach meaning to, it's a fucking superpower. And no one, we're all walking around. We should be wearing capes. Life is the ability to attach meaning and whatever meaning we want to whatever we want. You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes that plays us, and a side eye can become hatred. But also sometimes it can be whatever. Like we can manifest our own reality because our perception is so powerful. And that's life.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I love that. I think it's great. Mm-hmm. Go buy new socks. Make it mean something. Because you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that gets into ritual. We should do
yeah,
that
using novelty in a conscious way is beautiful, and it really can change your whole life. Because anything that will interrupt your pattern of dullness and bring you into presence is an automatic doorway to that ecstatic current.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this podcast is alive and needs to be alive. Also, for now, probably needs to die in this moment.
I gotta go buy new socks.
What's going on?
It's time to
it's time to end so we can bring it the next time. Good conversation. This podcast on aliveness, this version episode on aliveness is dead and done. But you live on, so go and share this with another person, please, and join us on social media. Ask us questions. We will be at Conversations with Life. Will be at Revival, and we'll be live, and we'll do a couple of episodes there. So come join us. It'd be amazing. ourrevival.org, I think, is Divine Assembly.
It's a beautiful festival, like very affordable and family friendly and wonderful.
So good.
This will be our 4th year there with a camp. So
yeah, so come join.
Mid-June.
Yeah, mid-June.
Solstice weekend.
Solstice weekend. If you're in Utah or if you're not here, come join us, and be part of the conversation there. That always is. It's always a beautiful experience, full of aliveness.
There you go.
Have a beautiful day, y'all.